The crystal champagne glass shattered on the polished marble floor, but no one heard it over the laughter. The sound had been swallowed whole by the applause and the booming, confident voice of its host, Mark. He stood on the small, makeshift stage in their enormous living room, bathed in the warm light of a spotlight he'd rented just for the occasion. His wife, Sarah, stood in the shadows just off to the side, her hands clasped, a proud, nervous smile on her face. This party was for his big promotion, and everything had to be perfect. Mark raised his glass high. And finally, Mark beamed his teeth a perfect, blinding white. I have to thank my biggest supporter, the one who has been there through it all, my lovely wife, Sarah. A spotlight suddenly hit Sarah, and she blinked, her smile widening. She felt a blush of genuine happiness. He was thanking her, in front of everyone. She's truly my biggest supporter, Mark continued, and the crowd chuckled, not quite sure why. Mark winked. I mean, in every sense of the word. She's really weighed me down these past few years, with all her love, of course. The room went quiet, not a polite quiet. It was a suffocating, horrified quiet. A few people coughed. Sarah's smile didn't just fade. It froze, broke, and fell from her face. She could feel every single eye in the room, the judging eyes of the other wives, all so thin, so perfect, staring at her. He had done it. He had taken her deepest insecurity, the one he had helped create, and turned it into a punchline for his business partners. Her heart, which had been full just a second before, felt like it had been squeezed by a cold metal fist. The tears came instantly, hot and stinging. She saw a smirk on the face of Mark's new, very thin assistant, Lisa, in the front row. Sarah turned, the tears blurring the perfect, expensive party lights, and she ran. She ran through the crowd, past the silent, staring faces, and out the front door into the cold night air. But Mark didn't follow. He just cleared his throat and continued his speech. What would you have done if you were Sarah? Would you have stayed, or would you have run, just like she did? Where are you watching from tonight? Let me know in the comments, because this story is just getting started. To understand how a man who once promised to love her in sickness and in health could be so cruel, we have to go back to the beginning, before the parties, before the big house, and before the pain. 10 years ago, Sarah was not the woman hiding in the shadows. She was a son. She owned a small, beloved bakery called the Sweetheart. People didn't just come for her cookies. They came for her smile. Sarah had a way of making everyone feel warm and important. She wasn't a supermodel, but her eyes were bright. She had a laugh that was loud and real, and she was, above all, kind. She believed in the good in people. Then Mark walked in. He was a hurricane. He was handsome, ambitious, and charismatic, working at a small tech startup that was going nowhere fast. He saw Sarah, and for him, it was like finding a secret weapon. He loved how people loved her. He loved her warmth, her kindness, her endless empathy. It was like a battery he could plug into. He told her she was beautiful every day. He told her she was his rock. And Sarah, who had always been a giver, gave him everything she had. They got married 6 months later in a small ceremony behind her bakery, surrounded by flowers and the smell of fresh bread. For the first few years, they were happy. Mark's career started to take off. He used Sarah's kindness to network, hosting dinners where she charmed everyone. He got promotion after promotion. They sold the bakery. Mark said it was small time, and she was better than that. They bought the big house. Sarah's world became about supporting Mark. She was happy, or so she told herself. She was happy because he was successful. Then, the tragedy happened. They had been trying for a baby for a year. Finally, the test was positive. Sarah had never been happier. She was glowing. They were planning the nursery, picking out names, and then at 5 months, she lost him. The doctor's room was quiet. The drive home was silent. Mark was awkward. He patted her back and said, "Well, we can always try again." He went back to work the next day. But Sarah fell apart. A piece of her had died, and a dark, gray fog rolled in and refused to leave. She stopped seeing her friends. She stopped leaving the house. The only thing that brought her a single, tiny spark of comfort was the one thing she knew how to do: bake and eat. She ate the cookies, the cakes, the pies. She ate her grief. It was the only thing that felt like a hug in a house that had suddenly become cold and empty. The pounds crept on. 10 pounds. 20. 50. Her bright clothes were replaced by gray sweatpants. Her loud laugh became a quiet whisper. She was still in the house, but she was gone. At first, Mark didn't seem to notice. He was too busy with work. But then, as his career got bigger, his patience got smaller. He started to look at her differently, not with concern, but with disgust. It started small. "Honey, are you sure you need that second slice of cake?" He'd ask at a dinner party, making everyone at the table freeze. Then it got worse. "You know, Sarah, my colleague's wife runs marathons. You should try, walking." He bought her a gym membership for her birthday and left the brochure on her pillow. He started, accidentally, leaving fashion magazines open on the coffee table, all featuring stick-thin models. He stopped touching her. He stopped looking at her when she spoke. He stopped seeing Sarah and only saw her weight. She tried. God, how she tried. She joined the gym he'd bought her. She walked on the treadmill, tears streaming down her face, surrounded by perfect bodies in tiny outfits. She tried every diet she could find. She would lose 10 pounds, and Mark would say, "It's a start, I guess." Then the grief would wash over her again, the emptiness of the nursery down the hall, and she would find herself in the kitchen at 2 a.m., her heart breaking all over again. She became a ghost in her own beautiful home. The house was filled with expensive things, but it was empty of love. Sarah's best friend, Jessica, a fiery lawyer who had known Sarah since college, couldn't stand it. "Why do you stay with him, Sarah?" Jessica had pleaded just last week over coffee. "He's not a man. He's a monster in a $1,000 suit. You are kind. You are smart. You are a wonderful person. He is draining the life out of you." "He's just stressed, Jess," Sarah had whispered, defending him for the 1,000th time. "The promotion is a lot of pressure. He still loves me. He's just forgotten how to show it. This party tonight. It's important. I think if I can just be the perfect wife tonight, things will get better." Jessica had just shaken her head, her eyes full of pity. "He doesn't deserve you, Sarah. He doesn't deserve the woman you were, and he definitely doesn't deserve the woman you are." Now, Sarah was huddled in her car, parked a block away from her own home, the engine off, the cold seeping into her bones. Jessica was right. It wasn't stress. It was cruelty. He had mocked her. He had humiliated her in front of the world he cared so much about. The man she loved, the man she had given her entire life to, had looked at her pain and used it as a joke. The tears were so thick she could barely breathe. She was done. She was finally, completely done. Her hand was shaking so badly she could barely hold her phone. She needed to call Jessica. She didn't even know what she needed. Her phone buzzed in her hand, lighting up the dark car. She squinted, her vision blurry. It was Mark. Her heart gave a stupid, hopeful leap. Was he apologizing? Was he worried? She swiped to open the message. But it wasn't from Mark. It was from an unknown number. Her fingers trembled as she tapped the notification. There were 2 messages. The first message was just 4 words. "You deserve to know." The second message was a video. Her heart stopped. With a shaking thumb, she pressed play. The video was shaky, as if filmed through a window or a slightly open door. It was dark, but she recognized the room instantly. It was her house. It was her bedroom. And the video had been taken tonight. During the party, she saw Mark. He wasn't in his suit jacket anymore. He was laughing, and he wasn't alone. He was with Lisa, his assistant, the woman who had smirked at her, and he was kissing her. He was kissing her with a passion, a hunger, that he hadn't shown Sarah in years. Sarah put her hand over her mouth, a choked sob escaping. The video was bad, but the audio was clear. She heard Lisa's high-pitched, fake laugh. "Is she really gone?" Lisa asked, her voice dripping with amusement. And then she heard Mark's voice, the voice that had just humiliated her. The voice that had promised to love her forever. Yeah, she's gone, Mark said, his voice casual, almost bored. She always runs away crying. It's pathetic. She'll go to her friend's house or cry in her car for an hour. We've got time. The phone slipped from Sarah's numb fingers and clattered onto the floor mat. She stared blankly at the dark windshield. She couldn't breathe. The air was gone. The world wasn't just cracking. It had just exploded, leaving her in a cold, dark, silent void. He hadn't just mocked her. He hadn't just cheated on her. He had done it all at once, in their home, while she was still trying to recover from the public humiliation he had caused. The joke, the run, the video, it was all a single, perfectly cruel plan, and she had walked right into it. For a full minute, Sarah didn't move. She didn't breathe. She just stared at the dark windshield as the empty night stared back. The phone was on the floor, but the voices from the video were in the car with her. She always runs away crying. It's pathetic. We've got time. Pathetic. That's what he thought of her. Not sad. Not hurting. Pathetic. The word echoed in the ringing silence of her ears. He hadn't just cheated. He had planned for it. He knew her. He knew her pain, and he used it as a cover. He used her grief as a distraction so he could bring another woman into their bed, the bed where they were supposed to have raised a child. A new feeling, cold and sharp, cut through the thick fog of shock. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't grief. It was rage. A pure, clean, ice-cold rage that burned away her tears. The love she had felt for him, the loyalty she had held on to for 10 long years, didn't just die. It was murdered, and in its place, something new was born. Her hand, which had been shaking so hard, was now perfectly still. She picked up her phone from the floor. She looked at the blank screen, then at her own reflection in the rear-view mirror. Her eyes were red and puffy, her face stained. She looked broken. She felt broken. But the woman staring back at her, her eyes weren't just sad anymore. They were hard. She started the car. The engine's roar sounded as loud as a scream in the quiet street. She didn't drive home. She knew she could never call that place home again. She drove to the one place in the world she knew she was safe. She drove to Jessica's. The drive was a blur. She passed the bright lights of downtown, the dark parks, the sleeping houses. It all looked like a movie set, fake and far away. The only real thing was a new, hard stone in her chest where her heart used to be. She didn't cry. She was done crying. Crying was what he expected. Crying was pathetic. She arrived at Jessica's apartment building and didn't even bother to call up. She just sat on the front steps in the cold and sent one text. "I'm outside." A minute later, the heavy glass door flew open. Jessica stood there in a pink bathrobe, her hair in a messy bun, her face full of sleep and confusion. "Sarah? What on earth?" And then Jessica saw her face. The confusion vanished, replaced by a sharp, sudden fear. Oh my God! What did he do? Sarah didn't say a word. She just stood up, walked past her friend into the warm lobby, and held out her phone. "You need to see this," she said, her voice flat. Jessica, the tough lawyer who faced down angry judges and corporate sharks, took the phone. They stood in the elevator as it rose, Jessica's eyes glued to the screen. Sarah watched her friend's face. She saw it twist from confusion to shock, and then it turned into the face Sarah had seen in court, a mask of cold, controlled fury. The elevator doors opened, and Jessica walked into her apartment, went straight to her kitchen island, and poured 2 very large glasses of whiskey. She handed one to Sarah. When Jessica's voice was quiet, dangerous. "Tonight, during the party," Sarah said. She took a sip. The liquid burned, and it felt good. Right after he made the joke, I ran, just like he said I would. He counted on it, Jessica whispered, her knuckles white as she gripped her glass. He used your pain as his alibi. She looked up, and her eyes were a lawyer's eyes. "Sarah, this isn't just a divorce. This is a war. And that man, that thing, has underestimated you for the last time." And that's when it finally happened. The dam didn't just break. It was obliterated. Sarah fell onto one of Jessica's kitchen stools, and the sobs came. But they weren't the quiet, sad sobs of a victim. They were loud, ugly, choking sound of pure rage. She cried for her baby. She cried for her bakery. She cried for the 10 years she had wasted, for the woman she used to be. She cried for all the kindness she had given to a man who only saw it as a weakness. Jessica didn't say, "It's okay." She didn't say, "He's not worth it." She just came over, wrapped her arms around her friend, and held her. She let her scream and cry and pound her fists on the kitchen counter until she was empty, until all that was left was a quiet, shuddering echo of her pain. "He called me pathetic," Sarah finally whispered, her voice raw. "Good," Jessica said, pulling back and handing her a paper towel. "That's our advantage. He thinks you're a pathetic, overweight, crying mess. He thinks you're stupid. He thinks you're weak. Let him." Jessica's phone, which she'd used to call herself a cab, buzzed on the counter. Sarah flinched, but it wasn't her phone. It was Sarah's phone, which Jessica had put in her pocket. Jessica looked at the screen. Her eyes narrowed. "It's him." She held up the phone. A text from Mark. "Mark, where the hell are you? You completely embarrass me. All my partners saw you run out like a child. Call me now." Sarah stared at the words. "Now, are you okay?" Not, "I'm sorry." Not even, "Where are you?" It was, "You embarrass me." He had just been caught cheating in the most brutal way, and he was the one who was angry. Jessica watched Sarah's face. The last flicker of the old, hopeful Sarah died. The woman who looked up from that phone was someone Jessica had never seen before. "Okay," Sarah said, her voice steady. "I'm done. What do we do?" A slow, proud smile spread across Jessica's face. "Now we fight," she said, switching on her laptop. "First thing, money. He's going to hide it. He's a VP. He has stocks, bonuses, offshore accounts. He's been planning this. Sarah, that assistant, Lisa, this wasn't their first time. This was just the first time they got caught. I don't know anything about the money," Sarah admitted, a new wave of shame washing over her. He always handled it. He said it was too complicated for me. He just gives me an allowance for the house." Jessica's fingers stopped typing. "An allowance? You, who own your own successful business." Her face was grim. "Oh, he's good. He isolated you. He controlled your money. He destroyed your self-esteem. He made you a prisoner in your own home. What do I do?" Sarah asked, her voice desperate. "You need to go back," Jessica said calmly. Sarah's blood ran cold. "What?" No, Jess, I can't. I won't. I can't look at him. I can't be in that house." "You don't have to look at him. He'll be at work tomorrow, acting like nothing happened, and he'll be angry at you," Jessica said. "He thinks you'll come back crying and apologize for embarrassing him. That's our window. You're not going back as his wife. You're going back as a spy. We need documents. Sarah, tax returns, bank statements, his laptop. We need to know who this unknown number is that sent you the video. That person is our angel. They have more." Right on cue, Sarah's phone buzzed on the counter. Another text. It was the unknown number. Sarah and Jessica looked at each other. Sarah's hand shook as she opened it. The message was simple. He's asleep. He didn't even bother to log out. His office. His laptop. The folder is called Archive. He thinks he's smart. He's not. "Who is this?" Sarah whispered, a chill running down her spine. "Someone who hates him as much as we do," Jessica said, her eyes wide. "A coworker he screwed over. Another woman. It doesn't matter. They just gave us the key. You have to go. Now, before he wakes up." "He's asleep?" Sarah said, looking at the clock. 3:45 a.m. "He's in our bed, sleeping after all that?" "He's a monster, Sarah. Monster sleep great," Jessica said, grabbing her car keys. "I'm taking you. I'll wait at the end of the street. Get in. Get the files. Get out." The drive back to her house was the longest of Sarah's life. Every beat of her heart was a drum of terror. "I can't do this. I can't." But then she'd see Mark's text. "You embarrass me." and the ice would form in her veins again. Jessica parked at the end of the long, dark driveway under the shadow of a large oak tree. He's in the master bedroom. His office is at the other end of the hall. You know the house better than he does. You're a ghost. In and out. Go. Sarah got out of the car. The cold air hit her. She walked up the stone path to the house she had once loved. The party decorations were still up, looking sad and cheap in the pale moonlight. She used her key. The lock turning sounded like a gunshot. The house was dead quiet. It smelled of stale champagne and betrayal. She slipped off her shoes. She crept up the wide, curved staircase, avoiding the step that always creaked. Her heart was in her throat. She got to the top. Down the hall to the left, the master bedroom. A faint sound was coming from it. Snoring. He was fast asleep. Not a care in the world. She turned right, toward his office. The door was open. A small green light glowed from his laptop on the huge mahogany desk. He really hadn't logged out. He truly believed she was that stupid. She sat in his expensive leather chair. It was still warm. She felt sick. She moved the mouse. The screen lit up. His corporate desktop. She saw the folder. Archive. She double-clicked. It was full of other folders. Taxes. Offshore. Bonuses. Lisa. Her breath caught. Lisa? She clicked it. It was full of receipts. Flights to the Cayman Islands. Jewelry store receipts. A wire transfer for a down payment on a condo. He was buying her a home. Sarah felt dizzy. She wanted to throw up. Get the files. She heard Jessica's voice in her head. She grabbed a USB drive from a cup on his desk and plugged it in. She dragged the archive folder onto the drive, copying 1,452 items. The progress bar was a green line of torture. Come on, come on. While she waited, she saw another folder. It was named after a bakery. The Sweetheart. Why would he have a folder for the bakery? They sold it years ago. Curiosity, cold and sharp, made her click. It wasn't just one file. It was dozens. Sale agreement. Loan applications. LLC formation. She didn't understand. She clicked on a file at the bottom. One that looked like a legal document. A PDF opened. She scanned the technical-sounding words, not understanding most of them, and then she saw it. At the bottom of the last page, a signature line. Sarah Jensen, sole proprietor. It was her signature. Only it wasn't. She had never seen this document in her life. It was a loan application for $500,000, using the bakery as collateral. It was dated just before they sold it, but she'd never taken a loan. Her eyes scanned the document again. The money hadn't gone to the bakery. It had been wired to another company. An MTech Holdings LLC. She clicked on the offshore folder. There it was. MTech Holdings. She fell back in the chair, her hand over her mouth. He hadn't just sold her bakery. He had used her. He had forged her signature, taken out a massive, fraudulent loan in her name, and then laundered that money into his own secret account. The computer beeped. Copying complete. Sarah pulled the drive out. She had come here for proof of an affair. She had found proof of a crime. He hadn't just broken her heart. He had made her a criminal. And that's when she heard it. A floorboard creaked in the hallway, and a voice, heavy with sleep and anger, called out, "Lisa, is that you? Did you forget something?" Sarah's blood turned to ice. His voice, "Lisa, is that you?" echoed in the giant, silent house. He sounded annoyed, not suspicious. He thought his mistress had come back. He thinks I'm pathetic. He thinks I'm weak. He thinks I'm stupid. The words she and Jessica had spoken just an hour ago became a shield. She didn't move. She didn't breathe. She didn't even blink. She was a statue of shadow in his warm, expensive chair. She could hear him shifting in the bed, the rustle of the $1,000 sheets. "Lisa?" he called again, louder this time, his voice thick with anger. "Don't play games. I'm tired." Sarah stayed perfectly still. The only thing moving was the blood roaring in her ears. She heard a heavy sigh, then a string of curses under his breath. He was complaining. complaining that his mistress was bothering him after he'd just humiliated his wife. The sheer arrogance of it was what saved her. She heard the bed creak again, a heavy sound as he rolled over. And then, a few seconds later, the low, rumbling snore resumed. He was asleep. He was so arrogant, so sure of himself, that he didn't even bother to get up. He just assumed he was right and went back to sleep. Sarah counted to 100. Slowly, her hand, clutching the tiny USB drive, was slick with sweat. That drive was her entire life. It was her past, her present, and her future. She rose from the chair, so slowly it felt like her muscles were tearing. She didn't walk. She floated, one silent step at a time, out of the office, past the master bedroom where the monster slept, down the curved staircase, avoiding the creaky step. At the front door, she didn't dare use a handle. She gently, millimeter by millimeter, turned the deadbolt. It made a soft, oily snick. She opened the door just wide enough to slip through and pulled it shut without letting it click. She didn't run. She walked, fast and silent, down the stone path under the pale moonlight. She got to the end of the long driveway, where the shadows of the oak tree hid Jessica's car. She opened the passenger door, fell inside, and locked it. Jessica didn't say anything. She just hit the gas. The car pulled away from the curb, and as they turned the corner, the giant, dark house disappeared from view. Sarah opened her hand. The USB drive was still there. She let out a breath she felt like she'd been holding for 10 years. And then she started to laugh. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was a wild, strange, terrifying sound, but it was the first real laugh she'd had in years. Hee hee. She gasped. He thought I was Lisa. Jessica looked at her, saw the wildness in her eyes, and a slow, dangerous smile spread across her face. He's pathetic, Jessica said, using his own word. Let's go home, Sarah. It's time to work. They spent the next 48 hours in Jessica's apartment. They called it the war room. With the blinds drawn and a pot of coffee constantly brewing, they went through every file. What they found was worse than Sarah could have imagined. The affair with Lisa was just the tip of the iceberg. The folder for the sweetheart was the real treasure. Mark hadn't just taken out one loan. He had taken out 3. He had forged her name, run her beloved bakery into secret debt, and then used that debt as a reason to convince her to sell it. He told her it was failing. In reality, he had been stealing from it for a year. He was the one who made it fail. All that money, over $1 million, was funneled into his MTech Holdings account. It was the money he'd used as the down payment on their big house. He had built their entire perfect life on a throne of her stolen dreams. He didn't just let me lose the baby, Sarah whispered, her face pale as she stared at a bank statement. He was stealing from me while I was in the hospital. Jessica just put her hand on Sarah's. I know, she said, her voice shaking with rage. And now we're going to take it all back. While Jessica, the lawyer, built a legal case, Sarah, the wife, had another job. Who sent the video? The unknown number was their guardian angel. Sarah sent a simple text. Thank you. You saved my life. I have the files. A few hours later, the phone buzzed. A new message. I'm glad he did the same thing to me. Not the affair, but the theft. My name is Anna. I was his co-worker at the first startup. The brilliant idea that got him his first big promotion? It was mine. He stole my work, presented it as his, and then restructured me out of a job. I've been working as a tech consultant for the company that runs his building security. I've been watching him for a year, waiting. When I saw him bring that girl up to your apartment during the party, I knew it was time. Anna wasn't just an angel. She was an ally, and she had access to everything. Over the next 3 months, Sarah's life changed. On the outside, she was still the quiet, heartbroken wife. Mark, furious that she had abandoned him, had his lawyers send her threatening letters. He'd frozen her access to their accounts, leaving her with nothing. He thought he was starving her out. He thought he was in control. He had no idea that Sarah was living with Jessica, sleeping on a couch and working every single day. She wasn't just grieving. She was learning. Jessica was teaching her about the law. Anna was teaching her about Mark's business. She read every file. She understood every crime. And as she worked, the old Sarah started to come back. Not the baking, smiling Sarah, but the smart, focused businesswoman who had built a company from scratch. The woman he had tried to bury under sweatpants and shame. She was still kind. She was still empathetic. But she was no longer soft. Her kindness was now a sharp, polished weapon. She was kind to herself. She was empathetic to the other people Mark had hurt. And she was going to use her humility, the thing he mocked, as her greatest disguise. The plan was set. 6 months after the party, Mark was on top of the world. He had filed for divorce, claiming Sarah was unstable and had abandoned him. He was living openly with Lisa in their house. And tonight was his biggest triumph. He was at a grand charity ball in front of all the city's most important people to receive the Businessman of the Year award. He stood on the stage, the spotlight shining on his perfect white smile. He was the same man she had watched at the party. Confident, charming, a liar. "I am truly humbled," he said, his voice echoing to the grand ballroom. "This award isn't just for me. It's for my team. It's for everyone who believes that good, ethical business is the bedrock of our community." In the back of the room, standing in the shadows, Sarah watched. She wasn't wearing sweatpants. She was wearing a deep emerald green dress. Her hair was done. She wasn't hiding. She wasn't crying. She was just watching, waiting. And finally, Mark said, his voice thick with fake emotion, "I want to dedicate this to everyone who has faced hardship. This last year has been difficult, but it has taught me about strength. It has taught me about resilience." "Now," Sarah whispered to herself. From a small control booth at the back of the room, Anna hit the enter key. The giant screens on either side of Mark's head, which were supposed to be showing his corporate logo, flickered. They went black. Mark paused, a flash of annoyance on his face. And then a new video started. It was shaky. It was dark. It was their bedroom. The entire ballroom, all 500 guests, watched in dead silence as they saw Mark Jensen kiss his assistant, Lisa. And then the audio, clean and sharp. "Yeah, she's gone. She always runs away crying. It's pathetic." A collective gasp sucked the air out of the room. Mark froze. His face went from tan to a ghostly white. What is this? "Turn this off. This is a technical." But the video was gone. It was replaced by a new image, a document, a bank loan for $500,000, and a signature, Sarah Jensen. Next to it, another image appeared, Sarah's real signature from her driver's license. They were not the same. Turd OFF. Mark roared, his voice cracking with panic. And then a new voice came over the ballroom speakers. Not Mark's. Not Anna's. It was Sarah's. Clear, calm, and strong. "My name is Sarah Jensen," her voice said, filling the silent room. "For 10 years, I was that man's wife, the woman he called pathetic. While I was grieving the loss of our child, he told me I was fat. He told me I was worthless. He mocked me." Mark was frantically trying to get off the stage, but the microphone on his tuxedo was still live, broadcasting his panicked breathing to the entire room. "But he didn't just break my heart," Sarah's voice continued, as the screen now showed the wire transfers, the M-Tech Holdings account, the receipts for Lisa's condo. "He broke the law. He stole my company. The sweetheart, the one you all used to love. He forged my name. He committed fraud. The man you are giving an award for ethics built his entire career by stealing from his wife." Mark ripped the microphone off his jacket and threw it to the ground. But it was too late. Everyone had heard. His boss, his partners, the reporters in the front row. And in the back of the room, 2 uniformed police officers, alerted by Jessica, stepped through the double doors. Mark saw them. He looked around, trapped, his eyes full of terror, scanned the crowd, and finally he saw her, standing in the shadows. Sarah. She wasn't running. She wasn't crying. She just held his gaze. In that one silent moment, he understood. The woman he thought was a stupid, fat, emotional wreck had just ended his life. 1 year later, the bell on the door of the Sweetheart jingled. The bakery was open again. It was brighter than before, painted in warm yellows and blues. It was full of people, the air thick with the smell of sugar and coffee. And behind the counter, her face lightly dusted with flour, was Sarah. She was laughing, a loud, real laugh, as she handed a little girl a cookie. She looked exactly the same. She was not a thin supermodel. She was Sarah, and she was, for the first time in a decade, completely and truly happy. The bell jingled again. A man stood in the doorway, blocking the light. He was thin, too thin. His expensive suit was gone, replaced by clothes that didn't fit right. His face was gray and tired. It was Mark. He had lost everything. The trial had been short. The evidence from the USB drive was perfect. He was found guilty of fraud, forgery, and embezzlement. He had lost his job, his house, his stocks. Lisa was gone. His friends were gone. He was ruined. He was a pariah. He stood in line, his eyes on the floor. When he got to the counter, he couldn't look at her. "Sarah," he whispered. His voice was weak. I am so sorry." Sarah looked at him. She looked at this small, broken man who had caused her so much pain. She felt nothing, not anger, not hate, not even pity. He was just a customer. "What can I get for you?" she asked, her voice polite, calm. He looked up, shocked. He expected her to yell, to cry, to say something. But she was just working. She was happy. Her entire world was right here in this bakery, and he wasn't a part of it at all. He had tried to break her by mocking her, by cheating on her, by stealing from her. And here she was, in the very place he had stolen, rebuilt, stronger than ever. And he was the one who was pathetic. He was the one who had nothing. Coffee," he stammered. "Just a black coffee." "That'll be $3.50, she said, tapping the register. He fumbled with some crumpled bills and paid. She handed him the cup. Their fingers didn't touch. "Have a nice day, Mark," she said. He turned and walked out. The bell jingled. Sarah watched him go, then turned to the next person in line, a huge, bright smile spreading across her face. "Hi there," she said. "What can I get for you today?"